and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Melinda Vasquez, and I'm with Women of AT&T, the Community Outreach Engagement Officer. Today, I want to welcome you to our Women's History Month panel, The Power of Women in Leadership. Today, we will hear from multiple diverse women leaders in the company as we discuss important topics such as the broken rung, the impact of the digital divide, and make sure that you submit all your questions online by hitting that Q&A button on the bottom right. And today, we want to thank everyone that presented or is hosting us, Oasis, WOA, IK, and Hacemos. Thank you. Over to Dawn. Dawn is going to be our moderator today. Dawn is a community engagement leader, Central Region for Corporate Social Responsibility. She served in the United States Army as a cargo specialist. Dawn is the national president of Hacemos and is also a member of AT&T Veterans, Women of AT&T, and several other ERGs. Welcome, Dawn. Thank you.
Thank you, Melinda, and welcome everybody. Thank you for spending the next 55 minutes with us today. Really looking forward to the conversation that we have at hand with the esteemed panelists. I am going to take just a brief moment and highly introduce them. I won't do them justice, as you will see here in just a moment. So I'll do a high-level introduction, and I'll let the panelists take it from there. So first up, we have Falguni Datta, and thank you for joining us. Falguni is the AVP of Strategy and Transformation, and she is actually responsible for AT&T's public sector and FirstNet organization, which is hopping right now, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit further?
Sure. I lead the strategy and transformation team in public sector. It's a newly created organization about a year ago, not the public sector, my organization. And it's a fascinating role. I've been having a lot of fun there. I've been with the company more than 3 decades now, so time flies when you're having fun here. And I've held a variety of different roles across finance, strategy, pricing, etc. Enjoy traveling, enjoy reading. Cinema therapy is something I enjoy on a personal level, and looking forward to the conversation.
Great. Well, thank you and welcome. All right.
Thank you.
Next, Dr. Chloe Lamel. Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chloe is our AVP of Workforce Diversity. As part of Hacemos and the other ERGs, we work hand in hand on a lot of different initiatives. So super excited to have you on the panel today. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit further as well?
Sure, Dawn, and thank you for having me. I always like to introduce myself as a mother who works because it showcases the order of priority for me and also highlights my biggest job, which I got in 2015, the birth of my son, Bronx, who's now 7. Then got a promotion in 2018, the birth of my daughter, Boston, who's now 4. Can't believe it. But what I do for AT&T, along with my team, some of whom are in the audience today and maybe on the audience virtually as well, is we work together, along with many of you, to improve AT&T's culture of belonging and connection. So a privilege that I get to do that work day in and day out.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And next, we're going to slip over to Lisa Tenorio Trupa, there. And Lisa is the AVP of Technology, and you are leading transformation. Do you want to explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for having me. Love being here with you ladies. I'm currently within the technology organization supporting our consumer segment of customers. So our mass market organization specifically, I'm thrilled to be a part of the team that's getting to implement our new Salesforce technology. If you don't know, AT&T is the single largest implementation of Salesforce. So we're carving a lot of our own stone right here and really trying to make sure that we make the experience better for our frontline agents and centers and stores, and therefore for our customers, to really build seamless experiences and address a lot of the history we have in our legacy applications that makes those jobs really tough. So I'm thrilled, having started way back in my early career in the center environment, thrilled we're getting an opportunity to finally address some of those pain points. So that's what I do today on a daily basis. Like Falguni, I've been around quite a long time. I knew Chloe before she had kids, so that tells you that. So I've worked in a lot of different organizations, but for me, what's also important is what I do outside of AT&T. I have a great husband, and we really keep busy with a lot of charity organizations. I'm also highly engaged with my alma mater that I went to as an undergrad, UT Austin, and I'm on the board of directors for our business school there, specifically focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm kind of carrying that passion into a different area of my life.
Well, with a 15-year-old looking at colleges, we might have to chat afterwards.
Lots to say about UT. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Great. Well, thank you. All right. And Miss Rachel Salinas, welcome. So Rachel is part of the Employee Giving Campaign organization, and which hopefully you guys all know about. If not, Rachel will spend a few moments here a little bit about that. But Rachel's also the national president of IK. You want to go ahead? Yes. Introduce yourself a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited and honored to be here with such amazing women leaders today. I started my career at AT&T almost 23 years ago, and I started in the call center as a customer service rep. So there is a pathway to get into management. Right now, I'm in the corporate social responsibility team, as you said, with Dawn, and I lead the employee giving program. And so, in my day-to-day roles, I manage that. If you haven't heard about what's new for 2023, hit me up, and I will share with you. But other than that, my passion is serving my community, which is the Native American community, and hope to raise some strong and resilient Indigenous girls. I've got 2, and then of course my son. And so they grew up with AT&T. I had my babies when I was still in the call center, no problem. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation. And again, thank you for having me.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you to all the panelists. And really excited again to be sitting here having this conversation. So when we talk about the broken rung, and that's what we're going to spend a few moments here discussing, it took a second, and I asked a few folks that I know just personally outside, has anybody heard of that before? And a couple of folks were, it's like, I have never heard of that phrase, or I'm not aware of what that actually means. So I'm just going to explain just high level what that means, and then we'll get into some questions. But the broken rung is a phenomenon that describes where women in management level positions are promoted at a lower rate than men. And that's what the broken rung is all about. And so Mackenzie and Lannon did a survey in, I believe, 2021. And out of that survey, it showed that for every 100 men in managerial positions, only 86 of them women were promoted. So again, out of 100 men that were promoted into managerial positions, 86 females were promoted. So there is that disparity, right? And so that's what we're going to spend a little bit on the first half of our conversation talking about. And then the second half, we're going to spend a little bit about the digital divide as well. So are we ready to jump right on in?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first question, and I'm actually going to address it, Chloe, to you.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on the broken rung? And what is one thing that you think we can do to tackle the broken rung?
Yes.
Starting off with a small question, by the way.
I know, exactly.
Solve world hunger.
Solve the world's problems.
That's right.
First question. And speaking of that, going straight to the what's one thing we can do to solve it, idealistically, if I'm speaking in idealistic terms, I think fixing the broken society we have is a part of it, where systems that are rooted in patriarchy or rooted in ableism or heterosexuality or white supremacy continue to pervade in certain pockets of society. So that's the idealistic answer. But to be more pragmatic, I wanted to start with the data even. And thankfully, a member of my team was able to help me with some of the data insights. And so that's what I wanted to see. Do we have that broken rung phenomenon here at AT&T? And the good news is we see actually a higher rate of promotions for women at senior leader roles. And when we look at the rate of promotions for women specifically in other levels, we're seeing a higher rate of promotions by the proportion of women in the workforce. So to explain that a little bit further, so we see roughly 30% of the workforce is women when we look at our 2022 end of year data, which it hasn't come out yet, but it will toward the end of next month. And our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion annual report. So be on the lookout for that and check it out, and you can read more details on how we as a corporation are faring when it comes to representation and the work that we're doing within equity and inclusion as well. But so back to the point, 30% women in the total global workforce. And then when we look at that by level, we actually see increases as you progress up the ranks. And so we see roughly 27% women in frontline roles, and that increases to 33% in management roles, L1 through L4, and then to 38% when we get into senior leader roles, L5, L6. But to close out with, what's the more practical, pragmatic approach to tackling this issue, I think it really starts with being very intentional and laser focused on ensuring that we are sending hiring managers and ensuring that they're using a diverse slate of qualified candidates so we can bring people in to positions and then later be able to see them progress within the business.
I'd actually love to just expand on that further from a everyday perspective. So I was sharing the story actually earlier this morning. I'm in the technology organization. I think it was end of February. We had our annual kickoff, right? Every organization has those. And we started ours in one of the most powerful ways I've seen for a technology organization. We started watching a video that was telling the story from a frontline perspective of what systems look like in a real call center, talking to real people, hearing directly from the reps about their experience. And it's really hard. You could hear a pin drop in the room with technologists because they built it all, right? So talk about the focus group coming to you. So it was really powerful and well done. But what struck many of us in the room was the people that introduced to the video, that talked about the video, were all our male counterparts. The only time you saw a woman was when they flipped the camera to the rep.
Oh.
And so it made it feel like, gosh, such a big disparity. Now we know in practice, we have a lot of great center leaders that are female, but there was a little bit of gosh, we missed an opportunity to showcase that. That there was a gap there in the storytelling. But it made me think back to when I was in a call center leading teams. I had a phenomenal group of managers, but I noticed one seemed to be struggling a little bit. So called her in hey, what's going on? Because your results are usually really strong, but something's been happening lately. And what I found out was she had gone through a divorce in the last year. That was not new news. But she was still in the middle of trying to figure out what every day looked like with her kids. And so we started talking about that, and she said, well, I get up and I make them breakfast, and they like waffles and pancakes, and I'm doing all this, and then I got to rush them to school and get to work. And I thought, oh my goodness, give them a Pop-Tart. It's okay. We literally had this moment. And years later, I saw her and she handed me a Pop-Tart because she said that struck her. It was she was trying to do too much, maybe, right? Every day. I'm gosh, my mom made me pancakes. It was on Saturday and it was a special occasion. But it's almost we put too much on ourselves sometimes, and maybe having what we can do is have those real conversations with each other about how you try to find the right balance.
Yeah, it sounds like you gave great advice.
Pop-Tarts are great. I'm just saying.
Pop-Tarts are great. So, and that actually is a great segue into our second question. And Falguni, I'll go ahead and pass that one over to you. So we heard Lisa's great advice. So what type of advice would you give to the next generation?
So I would start with, particularly for the generation entering the workforce and one who wants to aspires to advance, be the best that you can be at your job. That is primary, right? Race and gender are not a strategy. It is what you do, deliver with excellence, put in your 110% because it's your work that's going to speak for yourself. And then the second piece of advice would be, be empowered. No one is going to make you, or no one can make you empowered if you don't feel empowered. So it's important that you feel empowered. Now, empowerment is not about, a corner office and people reporting and, a title. It is really about being confident. It is about making sure that you are a little bit fearless and lean in, speak up, lean in, raise your hand. If you think something's not working or something is broken, make your voice heard. And that may take you out of your comfort zone, but you own your impact, right? But by doing that, you may have created an opportunity for yourself to lead, and you may not have all the answers or the solutions, but it allows you to connect people with and bring people with you. So, just be comfortable in getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's a great point. So I'll add into that just a little bit. And again, I said I have a 15-year-old, and we're learning what self-advocacy means. And so at 15, I'm, pushing a lot of things back on her. So she wants to change her schedule at school. I'm like, well, that's a conversation between you and your counselor, not for me to have with your counselor. So I think a lot of it, especially for us that are raising young women, is self-advocacy as well. Starting it early, starting it at home, so they can be comfortable, right? So as they grow up and get older, they take on that self-advocacy. It morphs into something a little bit more with more responsibilities, but at least now maybe they're a little bit more comfortable with it. I think that's a great.
Along those lines, my advice would be simply to be you. And I mean that twofold. One, kind of literally being your authentic self, but then two, as an acronym, be you, be yearning, be open, and be unapologetic.
Yes.
And so be yearning for continuous growth and learning opportunities, be open to new experiences and opportunities, and then being unapologetic about taking care of yourself, making time for you. Self-care is not selfish, and that you can pour into others more if your cup is full.
Right.
Yeah,
That's great.
So true.
Anything else to add?
I agree with everything you said. And going back to some of the advice you gave, that is what I did in the call center. So anytime there was an opportunity to learn about a new product or a new system, I'm going to date myself, but when we started typing DSL orders, it was a long time ago. I raised my hand. I wanted to learn, and then I ended up being the SME, or the subject matter expert for the call center. We started typing mobility orders. That was scary for everyone, in a wireline call center to start doing that. And so I raised my hand. I wanted to learn, and so those opportunities, and I made it known to management that my goal was to make this a career, not just a job, right? And so I think that spoke volumes, and my mom would always say, just be a go-getter, let them know what you want, and let them see you shine. And so that's what I did, and so when an opportunity came up, they came to me and asked me, would you like to apply for management? So just my story, but all the advice you gave is yes, exactly what I did. Is raise your hand, don't be afraid to volunteer, take risks, definitely.
Yes, well, great. And actually, I'm going to tag you in for this next one as well.
Okay.
So digital divide, right? So let's talk a little bit about there. We're going to transition a little bit about the digital divide. We know that there is huge disparity with the digital divide, especially in our communities of color. So do you want to touch on a little bit about how that contributes, though, to the whole broken rung?
Yep. So definitely it contributes to underserved communities, and most of them are communities of color. It's so obvious in the Native American community, where 30% of Native Americans do not have access to connectivity. And so, I think we all know connectivity equals possibilities, right?
Yes.
Greater possibility. So without that, they're already at a disadvantage. And then Chloe and I were actually at an event yesterday for the Native American Business Association. We learned some things there too, that Native American women earn just 60 cents on the dollar compared to men. Non-Native women still fall short at 86 cents on the dollar. So definitely that does affect it. Because when you have a community that's at 30% of not having connectivity, they're already at a disadvantage. So, but you all know, if you follow our company, we are doing great things. So we're already on that pathway to fix that in the Native community. So Definitely, I can talk more about that, but I think, we're doing great things, right, from whether it's distributions of devices, the first connected learning center on tribal lands that happened last month. A cell tower went up in Kenwood, Oklahoma, which was on the Cherokee Nation last week, and I had the opportunity to be there for the first call, one of the first calls made out of that town. Just imagine this being in a community where you have to drive 10 miles just to get a signal. So that is a disadvantage for women, young girls who maybe want to achieve to have a career, but they don't even have the connectivity to get learning or to apply for a job or things like that. So yeah, definitely a disadvantage. But again, I think what we're doing here at AT&T is definitely helping.
Yeah, and I'll chime in on that. I think that's a true point, especially in the Hispanic community.
Yep.
Everything now is digital, right? Everything is online.
Yep.
School sends everything out via email. Well, if you're a parent, and one, English may not be your first language, but two, you may not know how to set up. You've never had an email. So a lot of our connected learning centers are actually having those workshops, and we offer them in Spanish. So a little plug for Connected Learning Centers.
Yes.
If you're a bilingual out there and are looking to, help out, definitely shoot me an email and I can help you out with that. But a lot of that is starting it in the home, right?
Yes.
Because the students are great and they're great on technology. But their parents may not be. And so I think with AT&T, that's a great opportunity for us as well, as we're taking it not just to the student, right? It's a collective circle, right?
Yes.
Well, you've got to it's got to be a whole circle. You can't just, fix a piece of the pie. It's got to be the entire pie. And so I love that, and I love what I saw your guys' post on social media. And it was just amazing, and I didn't realize, 10 miles.
Yeah.
And that really shocked me. I mean, how long ago, for me, that's centuries ago. It's my mom, my grandma that used to have to drive out, and just to think that's still real today in a lot of our communities.
Yes.
And that's what inspires me so much, to Rachel's point about working at AT&T and what we're doing, not just for our employees, but for our community
Yes.
and our customers, and working to close the digital divide and providing digital literacy and connected learning centers and low-cost broadband. That's incredible work. Going back to that point about fixing the broken society,
Yes.
we're doing that. We're doing our part.
And I think that can carry through, right? I mean, we know today that even this is current issue aside, even if we just look at facts today, we have a dramatic decrease in pipeline of females that enter STEM fields, right? Like it just drops off dramatically, starting even in the middle school age range. This issue exacerbates that, right? Because if you're having to drive 10 miles to even get access to technology, imagine what the impact of that is to those folks in terms of thinking about their possibilities, for a career. So we have a problem even in today's world if we look at the pipeline, right, of talent, and we've got to address that. By the time I retire, I hope we're not talking about a pipeline problem, right? Like that should not be where we're focusing our efforts. Is let's get people connected, let's get them through and envisioning what's possible in technology fields.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't narrow that gap, we're starting out not at a level playing field.
That's right.
So forget about fixing the rung. I mean, that's even a longer possibility. You just have to first narrow that gap so everybody can start at the level playing field. And we saw during the pandemic, particularly post-pandemic, the impact, the costs of that is so high, right? School children who did not have internet access were left far behind. Folks missed their vaccine appointments or didn't have access to telehealth. So victims of digital divide, does not. I mean, and what we are doing is not altruism. It really is a business need. Because as we get into the labor market, particularly for the next generation, if we don't help narrow or hopefully, someday close, utopic as it may sound, that digital divide, we don't have access to the best talent. We haven't allowed people to grow to what their potential could be.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And then, Chloe, I'm going to ask you really quick, because I think we touched on a bit. If you want to add anything additional, how can we use our digital technologies for social inclusion?
Oh, yeah. I think, again, I'm proud of what we are doing. So the accessibility office within the Chief Compliance Office is doing a whole lot. Our DE&I team are doing a whole lot to really address social inclusion for people with disabilities in particular. And we find that women with disabilities face even greater disparities, and that broken rung is even more intense for women with disabilities. And so I think going back to the whole saying about diversity being invited to the party, inclusion being asked to dance, the other components are equity is getting transportation to the dance, regardless of where your starting point is. And then belonging is having the freedom to dance however you want to without fear of judgment. And so I think having that ability to provide equal access to the dance floor, and that's the accessibility piece, is ensuring that everyone can access the dance floor, is what we provide with our digital technologies.
Lisa, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I could tell you, I actually just stumbled a little bit upon this yesterday. So I mentioned I'm involved in some of my alumni efforts with University of Texas, and we were actually talking about how they're using their social platform to create virtual communities. Think of them like virtual ERGs, but on a campus level, and then extending that to alumni in this world where things have gotten really, divisive, and it's black and white on issues. Students are struggling through that on campuses. And so they're trying to create within, think of it as like an internal LinkedIn community for the university. They have subgroups that you can become part of so that there's somebody else like you maybe going through some of the same challenges, and they're just starting to extend that to alums. That can help maybe even further of, yes, I've been there. I know what you're struggling with. Or, hey, this is what it looks like when you get out of school, and how can I help you, kind of overcome this so you don't feel so isolated in what you may be going through, whether that's being a female in STEM, being Latinx, or having a disability. And so they're creating their own affinity groups, which I thought was really cool. I said, great, those will be our new members of our ERGs when they graduate.
Yes.
It'll be, just like the same to them. So I think that's a great way to use technology and a way to help, maybe some of these social pressures versus being the cause of the social pressures.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Good on that one? All right, we'll go in. So this one is really, I think we touched on it as well, but I'd like to just dive in a little bit deeper. So how do we prevent the digital divide from becoming the new face of inequality? It's a tough one. It's a hard question, right?
Yeah, I think our company, of course, is the social commitments we have. We've explicitly committed to connecting 5 million people, right? That is a way of narrowing that inequality. So we continue to do that. I think we have to be very deliberate. And when I say we, I mean the broader society, the corporations in general, particularly technology corporations, where they should have, explicit objectives. And I think many organizations, even within our company, are making this part of their performance objectives to help drive this through either through community engagement, through your volunteer programs as part of your personal objectives. So I think there should be a deliberate and conscious process to track and to hold people accountable for that. But also, just the ability to, our strategy and our purpose statement says that all, right? Our strategy of continuing to invest in fiber and mobility to make high-speed broadband accessible. That will definitely allow us to narrow that inequality, right? Because, like I said, if you have, access to technology gives you access to information. Information is knowledge, right? And knowledge is power. So unless we narrow that gap, we're not providing that level playing field. And unless, narrowing that gap is what will drive that or lower that inequality and bring folks together.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any perspectives?
Yeah, I would just say I think we have to challenge ourselves to continue to look at that full ecosystem about access, right? So it's one thing to build connectivity out to these locations, right, that just are desert islands for technology. Exactly. But that's just like building a building, doesn't mean they're going to come yet. So you've got to build the access, and you've got to participate in programs, which we do, the Affordability Connectivity Program that provides government assistance to folks that are of lower income, that just because we built the fiber to you doesn't mean you can afford it. Mm-hmm. So the ACP program helps people now afford the service. Well, now you need a device in the home. You need a laptop or a tablet or a phone. And so I think we've got, as a company, I think it's a challenge for us. We need to be looking at the second, third, fourth challenges that will come even after you build to the home. I think we can play a role in all of that, which is great. But we have to think about that not just in terms of problems to solve, but opportunities that creates for our company in having a more connected society.
And I think opportunities for our employees as well, right? Those volunteer opportunities to get out and teach some of those digital literacy workshops.
That's right.
I think it is a huge impact if you are from a specific community to give back to that community. What better way to, for a young person to see somebody that looks like them in a role that they could potentially have? And I think that speaks volumes as well.
Yeah, one of the things, I work in public sector and really proud to work there. There's a lot of, we are constantly, through the FirstNet program and through even our mobility programs, our customers are not just public, but even in commercial, they're renewing their mobility contracts, right? All the CRUs that they buy. Their used CRUs could be sent back, and we could then, donate it to these, to the underserved communities. I mean, there are many ways that we could go and narrow down that inequity.
Agreed.
But it'll take time. It'll take time.
Yep, it's definitely not an overnight.
Yeah, well, I would say too, right, like even just being ready to serve those customers. So our retail team, they really started, I think it was about last year, in earnest, really taking a hard look at where we serve Hispanic customers and where we have gaps to serve them in language. So we definitely have Spanish speakers in our stores, but in certain pockets, you may have to go in a store and wait 3 or 4 people deep, waiting for the one Spanish speaker to help you. And that's not an okay experience, right, for our customers. And so they were really getting laser focused on what are those areas where we need to invest more dollars in Spanish speakers to help, serve our customers and make sure they're getting a good experience and that they want to do business with us. They already walked in the door. That's great. But if we're not serving them in the equitable fashion because they have to wait twice as long or 4 times as long, then we're missing an opportunity.
Right. All right. Well, I'm going to ask the last question before we open it up for Q&A, and this one is going to be for each of you guys to go ahead and answer. So, Rachel, you get lucky, so we're going to start this end and work our way down, so you got a little bit of time to formulate your answer. Falguni, not so much. Sorry. No. So, as a strong female leader, how do you define your own purpose and bring it to life?
So for me, and again, your purpose evolves as different phases of your life. For me, it is about staying relevant and paying it forward. I've been very fortunate to work in a company which has encouraged me to grow, provided me with the resources to learn and grow through, interesting experiences. And so I'm at that state. I've learned a lot over the last 3 decades. I've worked, in my 32 years, I've had 18 different jobs. So I've moved around a lot, and that has just enriched me. And, I feel really good that I feel very fulfilled when I'm able to pay it forward, either through, leading new projects or through mentoring or community engagement. So that is my purpose.
Very nice. Let's quote.
Yeah, so thinking about our company purpose of connecting people to greater possibility, I see my purpose as connecting people, myself included, to greater understanding. So understanding of ourselves, understanding of the societal inequities that still exist today, and then understanding of the scientifically proven solutions that we can pursue to drive meaningful change.
Great.
That's great. I would like cut and paste Falguni's answer. 'Cause you've been here a while, and same, we've had opportunity to do a lot of different things. I think we have that in common. But I would say today I really get a lot of fulfillment of spending time with folks that are at a different point in their career than I am, that are just starting out, some in the audience, that are just starting out and maybe making this an easier road for them, right? Like, and what I mean by that is the companies, it's been a wonderful set of opportunities that have been provided to me, but we're in an even better place now where we're encouraging people to be your authentic self. And so I spent a lot of time mentoring, talking about what does that look like? What does that mean when we say that? It means I want to hear what you did this weekend, and it's okay to talk about whatever that was. I want to understand what your family dynamic is, because it colors all of us and how we walk in the door. I want to understand what you do outside of AT&T and what your interests are, and maybe how do we find an intersection of how to bring that talent to the 8 hours or 10 hours that you might spend here during the day. So I get a lot of fulfillment with that. And work keeps throwing me new challenges too, so that I keep learning. But I think it's a good cycle to be in, to continue learning ourselves and maybe pass some of that forward.
Rachel?
Well, I can copy and paste too. I think we all have a lot in common. We all want to help the next generation. In our culture, we plan for the next 7 generations. And so definitely that is one of my passions, as I said at the beginning, is giving back to the community. My dad raised us volunteering all the time. And I see myself, I'm like, I guess I'm doing what Dad did. I'm organizing events for the community. That's my way of giving back. And I hope to instill that in my daughters, that I think that's my purpose, like I said, is to not just raise my daughters to be resilient like our ancestors, but to also to give back to the community. And, I also feel it's part of our responsibility for the next generation also within our community is to bring more awareness to issues that affect the Native American community, and to educate our fellow employees, our community about that, to bring more visibility to those issues. And then besides that, I just, can't speak enough about how proud I am for our company and what we're doing in tribal lands, but just in all underserved communities. And so, I get the honor of working in CSR and helping people through the employee giving program by actually giving back to their passions, and helping them through the giving program. So that is how I bring my purpose to life.
Well, great. Well, thank you guys, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Before we head into Q&A, I just want to check and see if you guys have any final thoughts you want to provide on either one of the topics today on the broken rung or digital divide. If not, we'll go.
Did you get a chance to share your purpose?
Oh, my purpose.
yes.
Oh, Dawn's
Yeah, that's
purpose.
good,
Well, put
Chloe.
me on the spot. It's not in my notes. No, just that's okay. I'm good on the spot. No, I think, again, copy and paste a lot. I've been with the company for 20 plus years. I'm very fortunate where I have a split family. So I have 2 older children, both in the workforce. My oldest daughter is a special needs teacher, and my son is in the workforce. And then I have 2 younger kids at home, 15 and 14. They're my midlife crisis. It would have been cheaper to get the car, but we got 2 more kids instead. But my purpose is really, for me, is being able to see the change from my older 2 kids and how things were when they were going into the workforce to when my other ones that are just now going to start going into the workforce. And so my purpose is to take the struggles that I saw my daughter and my son face and help alleviate those in the best way that I can. And raising awareness is a good, giving back into the community. I truly love being a panelist for young people with a diverse background. I think it's great for young people to see that not everybody has the same path, and it's okay.
Yep.
A lot of our students are going to have to work before they go into college. A lot of our students will go into the military, myself included, to be able to afford to go to college. A lot of those young folks are going to have to find a job where the company reimburses them. We're very lucky here at AT&T for the tuition reimbursement. So I love to be a part of that solution, just being in front of those young folks, along with other panelists that have different backgrounds, to say, hey, we all came from someplace different, but look where we are today. You know, it doesn't matter where you came from. It's, you know, whatever path you took, it's still a path, and that's your path, that's your authentic self. But there's still, you know, there is still that way of gaining or entering into the workforce. Or continuing your education, whatever that path may be. So that's kind of my purpose. All right, thanks. All right, well, Ms. Melinda, we're gonna hand it over to you for Q&A.
Well, thank you. Just a friendly reminder to make sure that you hit and submit your questions through Q&A. I don't have any online, but we can go to the audience.
Great, got any questions? Yes.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Devidra Williams. I'm on the Global Billing Resolutions team under the Jawanza Watts organization. Listening to all of you women, you're very inspiring, encouraging, dynamic. It's great to see. The question that I have for all of you, as I've sat here and I've listened to you, what inspired you to be the woman, or who, you know, the woman you are today? Who or what, you know, brought you to this point in your life to just keep pushing for your purpose that you are sitting in today?
I'll take it. For me, it's super easy. It's my mom. It's my mom, right? My mom taught high school for 30-something years. God bless her. High school. And she did it with a smile. And she only retired because she was done with the parents. she joked, she's like, I love the kids to my last day, because she found passion in that. But the parents, you know, helicopter parents started to be a thing, and she's like, I'm out. Plus, I was done with college, so she felt like she could, you know, move on. But it really was my mom. She was a single mom and raised my sister and I, and didn't miss a beat. Now, we had a lot of family support. I realize that now. You don't in the moment, but I think I called her after my first paycheck with Southwestern Bell Telephone at the time, and I said, Mom, I just got my first paycheck. I don't know how you did it. Like, how did you raise 2 kids, right? And we didn't ever felt like we lacked anything. So for me, that became a challenge. I'm like, I'm, relatively speaking, early in my career, more privileged in terms of opportunity than she was. So I'm like, I can't complain. I don't have a single right to complain. So that's always fueled me of, I have so much more opportunity because of the time and place, because of a different career path, that I have to take advantage of every opportunity that she provided me. I'm gonna tear up because my mom just passed. So just a few months ago, not like today, but a few months ago. But so she's top of mind always.
I didn't know that. I'm so sorry.
Thanks, Chloe.
That's beautiful, though. A way to honor her. I'm sure she heard it. To kind of piggyback off of what Lisa was saying, drawing inspiration from the progress that we've seen in society, that's something that even in the moments of where we still have continued challenge, and we still do, but I have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and recognize that we've made a lot of strides as a society. And I think about, you know, my ancestors, and then my grandparents, and then my mom, the experience she had. And the experience that I now have is better than the experience she had. And the experience my daughter will enter into will be better than the one that I had. And the struggle will be less. So that's inspirational to me, is that recognition that, yes, we have made progress. There's still more work to do. But that fuels me as well, as to be a part of the change we seek to see in the world.
Yeah, that's right.
For me, both of my parents were always inspiring, and my brother worked for AT&T, and so when I got the job at AT&T, I knew, again, it was not going to be just a job. I was going to make sure it was a career, and following my brother's footsteps. And my parents were so proud just getting a job within AT&T. Sure. You know, it's a big deal. I hope it still is for other people. It is for, you know. So, but my parents, you know, they really kept inspiring me. And my dad really encouraged me. You know, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to move up. You know, go for it. Just because you're a woman of color, just because you are who, you were born with that disadvantage already, right, of being born into the community. And so, I'm very proud of my heritage and my community, but you already start with that disadvantage. But my dad was always pushing me and my sister to go for whatever we want, not to give up. Don't let anybody tell us that we can't do it. In fact, prove them wrong that you can do it. So that was inspiring. And then working here at AT&T, just these amazing leaders, right? But I've been with the company 22 years. There have been great leaders, whether it's in the call center. I had some great women leaders there. We've had some past leaders that retired, like Ann Chow, Sent Marshall, right? Great women leaders that have been great examples. So those are what has inspired me over the years.
Can I just say, because you mentioned your dad,
Yeah.
allyship, right, is huge too. Jawanza is awesome. If you guys don't know Jawanza Watt, he is a huge ally, right, for strong females, and so I think that's super important. You said that.
Yeah, similar to Rachel, it's been not only my family. I'm a first generation immigrant, come from a family of strong women. So my mom, my grandma, they've always been inspiring. Not that they were out there in the workforce, but how they positioned themselves within the family. Taught me the power of empowerment or feeling empowered. But then, as I joined, when I came to the country, I really was pursuing an academic career, and one of my friends who was working in AT&T brought me on, and I just loved the environment here. And as you said, there were so many leaders who inspired me. I've always been fortunate to have great women leaders who've supported me, but also I've been fortunate to have experiences where I looked at something and said, that is exactly not what I want to do. So you get a lot of learnings from that also. So yeah, that's been my inspiration.
Yeah, I want to say mine's my mom as well. And Chloe, you said it as well, right? It's so inspirational to see, especially just in that 15, 20-year age gap between my two older and my two younger kids, how things have changed. And that is inspiration. But what keeps me going is my mom, who is in her early 70s. And she's still, to this day, I called her and she was remodeling her kitchen on her own. Cupboards are off, she's sanding, she's painting.
Great.
And again, this is not workforce, but it's just the tenacity, right? That's what I see in her is if it needs to get done, we get it done. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's her that's how she sees life, is if something needs to be done, just do it. It doesn't matter, male, female, it doesn't matter. If it needs to be done, just pull up your pants and just do it. That's been her philosophy. Mm-hmm. And so when I talk to her all the time, she's always doing something, she's out cutting the grass by herself and it's a hill. And I'm like, Mom, you could hire somebody for that. Why am I spending money? She's out pushing a mower. Yeah. But that tenacity to see that at her age, and then I'm not calling her old by any means, but as you see that that just, for me, that's inspiration to say, hey, I've got 20, 30, 40, 50 more years in the workforce, who knows, right? Because I see that in my mom. I see that, she may not be in the workforce, but she's still every day, there is striving for something and to get something done. And that to me is just, blows my mind to see that.
I'm going to add a little, because you mentioned allies, and I'm going to mention an ally here that I think several of us know. Stephen Iger has been a great ally, and he was one of my supervisors, and his thing was always make it happen. Mm-hmm. If you want it and you see it and you want it, make it happen. So that was always a great inspiration too. So yeah, and my mom is 87 next week or next month, and she gets on her treadmill every day, puts me to shame. Yeah,
I know,
every day. She's got time on her hands, but she does the same thing.
She's tenacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I hope I'm doing that when I'm that age.
Mm-hmm. Great.
No questions out on the web yet. Any other questions out here in the audience?
We have one?
Yes.
This is Sarita. I'm a strong believer of diversity and inclusion, and I represent OSS as VP and serve as VP mentoring this year. So my question is, as leaders, we look up to you, and how do we encourage women managing multiple priorities to invest their time in mentoring, both as mentors and mentees?
Reaching out first. I think, as I said, and as Lisa said, everyone wants to pay it forward. So I think it is reaching out, and I wouldn't limit it to just women, as we said. There's power of allies, right? So just reaching out and bringing them forward, helping them understand the purpose of this. And sometimes I think like this event, and it's a great thing that multiple ARGs have come together, right? We could try that in mentoring. I mean, I've done that in mentoring sessions where if I've had a guest, I've just, combined it with 2 or 3 different mentoring sessions. I've reached out to my peers. So we can, that also always helps because that saves time and you have the ability to encourage and attract more people to drive mentoring. But I think it's really reaching out. There are a lot of women leaders who are women or men leaders who are, anxious. And leadership is not just about ranks and levels,
title,
right?
yeah.
It is experience. So don't limit it to just the title.
And I'll piggyback on that. A lot of times also just leaving it open. It might not be the right time when you ask just because of priorities, but that doesn't mean it's a flat no for the next time. So I always say follow up. Myself, I might say, unfortunately I'm not able to, support it at this time, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't be open to it at a different date and time. Again, because we've got to prioritize, right? Sometimes, family, work, it could be lots of different situations where it's just not going to be the right fit at the moment, but that doesn't mean that it's a flat no. So I always follow back up with that individual and leave it open. Well, thank you for considering. Would it be okay for me to reach out at the next opportunity? And that might be a right fit for them then.
And I think part of your question was also around, like, how do you make time for that, both if you want to be a mentor or be menteed? I think part of that for me, and I'm maybe obsessive about this, but if it's going to happen, it's going to be on my calendar. If it's important, it's going to be on my calendar, and I hold myself accountable to that. From everything of workout time, when am I doing that, to, hey, I haven't connected with so-and-so who retired that, I really had a strong relationship with. When do I carve out that time? I literally will carve out windows of when can I meet with people that I mentor, and then they kind of shuffle in based on availability. But if it's important, you're going to make time for it. And sometimes it may not be tomorrow. It may have to wait till next month or the month after. But it's for all of us that mentor. I know this group of ladies are also mentored. Yes. So it doesn't stop, right? It's not ever a one direction thing. And so we have to make time for that too.
And sometimes, I'm sorry, Chloe. I was going to say, just being flexible, the structure may have to change. Instead of having a regular monthly session, you may invite 1 or 2 mentors just to do a one-time event and, bring in all the folks. I mean, that saves time also.
And Sarita, I was just going to say, first, thank you for your service through OASIS. Really appreciate having leaders like you volunteering your time along with Dawn and with Rachel and with Melinda and the countless others who volunteer their time. So thank you. To Lisa's point, I have had to learn how to say not yet, the power of not yet. I've always struggled with no to the managing time point and making time for mentor and mentee relationships. The not yet is so important because it's not I won't do it, to Dawn's point, but at this point I have too much going on, so it's a not yet, and keep those lines of communication open. And the last thing that I'll just mention is the best mentor relationships that I've formed have been more kind of organic, genuine conversations and less formal and prescribed, but something where we could find those natural connection points and similarities, and then develop over time a mentoring relationship.
We have 2 questions on the web, and we'll go ahead and hit one. What is the best piece of feedback you received, and how has that helped shape your career?
I can start.
We're all got our mouths open.
Mine was the best feedback I ever got was from a leader a long time ago, not at AT&T, who told me, you are not that important. And I was like, what?
I'm not? You don't know me.
I was like, how dare you? And then, but then she went on to say, at work, that if something were to happen to you and you were to leave the company, you are replaceable. And she didn't mean it in a negative way. She meant it in an empowering way, that make time for things outside of work. Because I didn't know it at the time, but I was near burnout and suffering from workaholism. And it was life-changing for me to have that perspective of you're needed elsewhere, and being a whole person is better than dedicating so much time to one thing. So you are not that important is advice and feedback that I will continue to remember.
How can you forget that?
Yeah. Mine was more advice than feedback, but I've never forgotten it, and I give it freely. And that is, I pass it on freely, and that's no one cares about your career more than you do. And that's so true, right? Nobody owes you anything but the opportunity, and what you do with that opportunity is totally up to you. And so not your mentor, not your sponsor, not your advocate, not whatever new term we think about. It's you that really has to take charge of what you want in your career and figure out the different pathways or people that you might need to get to know to help you get there, but you've got to be in control of that.
Yeah. Mine was treat this company as if it were your own. Think of yourself as the CEO in whatever you're doing. So whether it's the CEO of your life or CEO of whatever project you're doing, but treat it as your own.
Rachel?
I was some similar advice I got in the call center was pretend like this is your own little franchise of AT&T, right? And I was in sales, so in the call center. So, this is what you own, this is your space, and this is where you are the owner of this business, which is making your sales, hitting your sales target. I also got some other advice along my career. One was that when I wanted to look at getting promoted instead of trying to, get into another department, instead of looking to only get a promotion into another department, be willing to take a lateral and get into that department to learn more about it, and then try to move up within that department, which is whatever department is that you want to get into. Right?
Yeah, and I think for mine was twofold. I think Chloe, mine kind of touches on yours. Know your boundaries and know how to set them. That I had a hard time saying, learning the not yet piece. So it was always yes, 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 and then it bleeds into, and then something drops, right? Something is going to break unless you set up boundaries and know what those boundaries are. And then making sure part of that is just setting the proper expectation. So I've got these 3 things that are hot. One of them's going to have to go down on the list if this 4th one comes in. So working with those individuals, right, with your leadership or your peers on, okay, let's reprioritize. So that, to me, I still take that in every job. And that's what I think for me is stuck. I've had lots of great things that I've learned over the years, but I think that's the one that's been transferable to all my roles, is being able to know how to set those boundaries and say not yet.
Do we have time?
I think we have time for one, if it's a quick one.
We're probably going to have to hit this one after.
We'll hit it after. Yes. Okay. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us in our session for Women's History Month, The Power of Women in Leadership. Want to just say thank you to our esteemed panelists for this afternoon, for our audience members that took time out of your busy day. Melinda, thank you for helping us out with Q&A and getting us kicked off.
Thank you for being our moderator.
You're welcome. All right. Well, everybody, I think we're good to close. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon, and thank you.